Greetings, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube. I'm Lewis Cipher, and this is the Devil's Advocate Debate Club. Thanks for joining me. Kim Il-sung was the first leader of North Korea, and he was a monster. He's not the dictator that I'm referring to in the title of this video, not who we'll be defending today. His son, Kim Jong-Il, is more defensible, and I'll touch on why briefly. But I'm here to defend the current leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-Un. But we'll start with the father. Kim Jong-il was educated mainly in North Korea, though he also attended University of Malta. For my American viewers, Malta is a country in Europe. At Malta, he learned mainly about situational English, as his father seemed to see the importance of the English language on a world scale. Outside of his time in Malta, however, he was seeped in North Korean propaganda and education from birth to dictator. Worse, he seemed to have fully accepted his father's cult of personality. He believed, as he took power, that North Korea was widely loved, worldwide, and that North Korea was one of the most prosperous nations on Earth, when in reality, North Korea's main supporter, the Soviet Union, had collapsed 3 years prior to him taking power, and that left his country in an economic pitfall which he didn't expect and, honestly, hadn't been trained to deal with. His monstrous father had left him in a near impossible position. Despite this, by flirting with capitalism and somewhat opening North Korea's previously socialist markets, he kept the country from a complete collapse. The many human rights violations people remember Kim Jong-il for were started by his father. Now, a quick glance at history shows what happens when an oppressed population finds out how oppressed they are, and it's always bloody for the current ruling class. So I doubt Kim Jong-il knew how to change his father's policies without putting his family at risk. But he made sure his son learned better English than he had, and at a younger age, in a public school in Switzerland, I believe, and he let his son watch foreign television. He broke the tradition of ignorance his father had bred in him. So Kim Jong-un grew up with a more balanced worldview. He grew up seeing some of the benefits of Western culture, and from his dying country, I'll bet they looked pretty good. Now, he's already proven himself to be a very different leader than his father or grandfather before him. After his father's death in 2011, Kim Jong-un was essentially the supreme leader of North Korea, but appears to have spent the first 2 or so years taking political prisoners and executing rivals and family members to consolidate his power. Given the kind of complete collapse we've seen in places like Libya or Syria when left without a strong political structure after the top collapses, this may have been a necessary evil to keep his country from completely collapsing. Kim Jong-un is well known for his nuclear weapon testing and long-range missile testing, with at least 5 reported nuclear tests before he shut down the program in 2016. Like his father, he tends to be blamed frequently for starting programs which are actually being continued from his grandfather's rule. The more informed blame him for continuing those practices, but put yourself in his position. You have a populace which worships you and your family as gods on earth, who believe they live in the most prosperous country on earth. You've inherited one of the worst economies in the world, and if your people find out, they'll most certainly kill you and your family. Your father changed very little, and likely raised you to believe these policies kept your family and nation strong. Now, faced with reality and responsibility, you know only two things for sure. One, if you change things too fast, people will revolt, likely leading to the death of your family and collapse of your society. And two, if you don't change things, your country will continue its economic collapse and fail, likely within your lifetime. What do you do? It's a harder position than people give most dictators credit for, and not one where I would want to be born into. But what Kim Jong-Un did when he took power was two-sided. On one front, he kept his father's military growth going and kept his political rhetoric as over-the-top as his predecessors, to keep the appearance with his people that nothing was changing. Meanwhile, he shifted his government focus from its military to economic and agricultural education. He and President of America Donald Trump argued on Twitter more like boys in a schoolyard than national leaders, but ended up close to, if not friends, somewhere in the process. This led, according to the leader of South Korea, Moon Jae-il, sorry if I've mispronounced that, Moon Jae-in, and I probably still mispronounced that, but he believes Trump deserves a Nobel Peace Prize, or at least a nomination, for his efforts to the beginnings of peace on the Korean Peninsula. None of which would have been possible without the most open-minded leader North Korea has had. A man attempting to modernize and soften one of the poorest military states on the planet, without the disastrous vacuum of power often seen after a revolution. Often accused of his grandfather's crimes, and despite his nuclear testing, he may be the best North Korea could possibly hope for in their current political position. Supreme Leader Kim Jong-Un. But what do you think? What would you do differently in his position? Have you sat and contemplated the repercussions of being in complete control of a country? Ever sat down and thought what it's really like to be a dictator, the responsibilities and all of that comes with it? How would you lead North Korea into the future? Let me know in the comments below. Now, I did this video because I found almost no one I spoke to knew the first thing about North Korea or any of its leaders thus far, and that there have only been 3. But everyone had an opinion, and it was always negative. I can't say I like Kim Jong-un, but I can't honestly say I'd know how to do any better if put into his position. Remember, from leader of a country to Hollywood celebrity to Twitter blue checks, there are a lot of people with more influence or who are more well known than you. But we're all individuals, and we should judge each other equally. Your opinion is just as important as theirs. But maybe the next time you call a dictator evil, learn a thing or two about them as a person, about the position they were in when they made the questionable choices they've made, and think of what you would do in the same position, if anything differently, before you judge. So, who are some other well-known and well-hated political or social figures that I could defend? I mean, there's a few obvious ones, but if you've heard of any off the wall, I'd love to hear them from you. Leave me ideas in the comments below, and really I'd love to start seeing some debates in my comments. I know I don't have very many viewers yet, but the goal is always to get a conversation started, not just to push my opinion across. So, I don't know. Just never fear expressing your opinion, no matter how small you might feel it is. Anyway, As humans, I know you need to be reminded to like and subscribe, so please do so if you enjoyed my content. As always, I'm your host, Cipher, and thank you for watching the Devil's Advocate Debate Club.